On this week's episode, I'm flying solo, talking to Ross Tomkins of Alphagenix about the role for testosterone replacement therapy for men facing the andropause. As men age, natural levels of testosterone drop steadily year by year, and by the time a man is in his late 30s, 40s, or 50s, his testosterone levels could be 30 to 50% lower than they were in his 20s. That can mean loss of muscle, loss of strength, falling energy, falling confidence, increased weight gain, brain fog, falling motivation, and loss of libido. While lifestyle factors can play a part in helping keep natural hormone levels elevated, if testosterone is already low, then TRT may be an option to alleviate the symptoms and improve quality of life. Find out more about the andropause, TRT, and Ross's own journey as we chat all things testosterone. Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Mentors with me, James. I'm actually flying solo for this episode. Claire is otherwise engaged, but it may be just as well because we are going to be talking about testosterone replacement therapy, which of course is a great thing for so many midlife men out there. And I'm joined by a special guest this week, Ross Tomkins of the company Alphagenix, which is really pioneering in this space in the UK. So Ross, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, James.
So tell us a little bit, if you would, about how you got into this space, because you came from a health background, but you kind of ended up moving to the space of looking at testosterone replacement therapy and setting up a service for men to basically get tested and then get treatment if they wanted it and if they needed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Alphagenix has been born out of my own experience, really. So my symptoms of low testosterone started over a decade ago. I had joint pain and lethargy, which as a physiotherapist at the time, I knew wasn't coming from a sprained ligament or a damage to the joint or muscle. So my sort of inquisitive clinical mind kept pressing. I was referred to the NHS, to the endocrinology. By then I was experiencing apathy, lack of desire for anything, and then brain fog, which was the scariest, about which time the endocrinologists in the NHS said, there's nothing wrong with you. It's all in your head. Your bloods are fine. Now, as I mentioned, my inquisitive clinical mind there went, well, I don't buy that. I know my body better than somebody else does. So that set me off on a path of all manner of biohacking over the years. But one of the things I did was encounter the endocrine system in way more detail than it was ever covered in my training as a physiotherapist. And I found a fantastic doctor down in London, Dr. Willis, who after 60 minutes of me talking to him, identified low testosterone. When I asked him why that wasn't picked up by the NHS, it led on to quite an interesting conversation about normal levels, optimal levels, treatment protocols, which I'm sure we'll probably cover off later. But that's how I sort of stumbled into it. I then used testosterone myself, always supervised by the doctor for about 10 years. But later, when I swapped to a different doctor service, what I found was it was very transactional. I never really felt like I was part of a tribe, part of a community. I didn't really feel like that extra level of support was there. So Alphagenix was born last year when I wanted to bring my knowledge, my experience, but combine that with really the service that I thought I wasn't getting. So we beta tested it late last year and then started Alphagenix officially in January.
Awesome. And we'll hear more about Alphagenix in a moment. And we'll come back to that missed blood diagnosis in a second. But I guess for those of you that are regular listeners, you know that Claire and I talk a lot about midlife issues. And for women, we talk a lot about the menopause, and I talk a lot about the andropause as well. I guess this podcast is directly related to that. So the andropause, just to recap for any new listeners, is a process that most men will go through, have symptoms from. So basically for men, Ross, you can jump in, correct me if I'm wrong. Our testosterone production peaks. Testosterone is our primary sex hormone, and it defines a lot of our typical male characteristics: muscle mass, strength, energy levels, but even has a role in cognitive function, immune system, etc. Now, our testosterone production peaks in our 20s and then starts to decline at a steady rate, between 1 to 2% per year, which doesn't sound a lot, but compounded, by the time we're hitting our late 40s, our 50s, we could be 30 to 50% lower, depending on our individual genetic makeup. And of course, at that level, where we see that such a drop off, we can start to notice some of the symptoms that Ross, you were referring to there, like low energy, low motivation, joint pain. You can have things like brain fog, low level anxiety, depression, lack of confidence, and of course, declining muscle mass, declining strength. That can lead to weight gain because you haven't got as much muscle mass. So your metabolism is slowing down. And now the research I've seen there says that they estimate between 30 to 50% of men will experience some symptoms and 10% of men severe. But my personal view in that is I think that's probably underreported because A, no one really knows about the andropause. Most men don't even know the term. And B, men are notoriously poor at going forward to their health professional for advice. So if we just look at the pure biology of it, at a certain point in your life as a man, your testosterone will reach a level where you'll start having symptoms of low testosterone.
Yeah, totally agree. I think I can add to that as well. So men, we are notoriously bad at asking for help. I think we are getting better. But the other really big thing is men don't know to ask for help, because how the andropause differs to the menopause is, as you've quite rightly identified, in its gradual nature. So when a lady goes through the menopause, it's obvious, it's rapid, there's a quick change in body function, composition, mood. Andropause is totally different. So a man, as you say, loses 1 to 2% per year, which means it's a very slow, gradual decline. Those symptoms, therefore, are assimilated, if you like, and a gentleman just thinks that's normal. So by the time he gets to 30, 40 or 50% reduction, he's feeling pretty ghastly, sitting on the edge of the bed every morning, trying to summon the energy to get out and attack the day. Doesn't consider that testosterone could be an issue. He's just accepted it's normal. His doctor's probably told him he's getting old, just to get on with it. His friends are probably feeling it as well. So again, no support there. So they just drift on through life without knowing there is something else we can do. Quite often, and hormone optimization therapy and TRT can play a really important role.
It's interesting what you said there. This gradual onset of symptoms, and a lot of the symptoms would be categorized under inverted commas old age, and that's sometimes some of the pushback I get when I talk about antibiotics. Like, well, isn't it just age related, or how do I know that I'm not just particularly worn out at this time? How do I know that it's just not stress? And my response to that is always, well, look, if it's there for a bit and it goes, that could just be you're going through a low energy phase. If the symptoms are persistent or building, then it's likely this is what's occurring. But of course, the way to get it actually diagnosed is to go for a blood test to check the testosterone levels that you have in your blood, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that tells you definitively where you're at on the scale. Low, in the middle, high, optimal, which is obviously what we're looking to achieve with someone. So blood test tells you straight away, as you've said there, testosterone fluctuates. It fluctuates on a 24-hour cycle for men, as opposed to women who have a 28-day cycle. Ours fluctuates over 24 hours. It'll also fluctuate with stress, lifestyle, exercise, diet, sleep patterns, where you are in the world. But if you're really low, you can live an optimal life. You can exercise perfectly, eat the right food, practice mindfulness to get rid of your stress levels, but it's still very unlikely to become optimal again. So you still could probably do with some help optimizing it if you're still experiencing symptoms, as you say.
So let's talk about that initial test you had with the NHS and the diagnosis there. So is the NHS using different levels of testosterone in blood tests to diagnose?
No.
How did they miss it the first time?
It's because they don't believe in it.
Oh, okay.
In the UK, we use nanomoles per litre as the marker. Depending on which laboratory you use, that range of normal is somewhere between 8 and 28 nanomoles per litre. Some are 7.7 to 31, some are 8.64 to 28, but that's the sort of range we're looking at. And the first thing, of course, you notice is it's a huge, great big range.
That's a big range.
It is a big range. And they say all of that is normal. If you're in there, don't worry about it, which is where I was. I was at 12 as a early 30-year-old, which is really low.
Okay.
I was having all of the symptoms that you've discussed by this point, but they'd have said you're normal. And if you look at blood screens, it comes up with a green tick or a red cross. Mine were all green ticks, so they didn't want to know, sent me off. Right. Even if you go below 8.64, often they'll say, yeah, could be stress, could be something else, go away for 6 months. If it doesn't get better, we'll maybe look at it. It's really hard to get treatment on the NHS. What we look to do, and we follow the guidelines from the British Society of Sexual Medicine, is we look to bring someone up above 20 nanomoles per litre. So this is where a gentleman feels optimal. It's where they're youthful, energetic, they can hold and build lean muscle mass. Weight isn't so much of an issue. You don't have brain fog. You're making quick, good decisions. And I constantly hover around about 22 now. And I can confidently say that I'm a better husband, a better father, a better friend, and a better businessman for being optimal, rather than dragging myself out of bed every day and going through the motions.
Why do you think in the UK at the moment there's such resistance at the NHS level on kind of recognising this and providing treatment for it?
There's probably two elements to that. One, it's very unlikely to be recognised because it's not taught when a doctor goes to university. It's not part of the syllabus. Andropause and menopause is very much just brushed under the carpet. It's not taught. So you have to go into a very niche area of medicine to understand it. And of course, general practitioners, their skill is knowing a little bit about a lot, not about knowing a lot about anything. So it's quite likely that you're going to encounter a GP that hasn't got experience in that sector. They probably don't recognize it. And rather than refer you on, they might just send you away. So that's the first thing. But the other one, which is perhaps a little bit more cynical, is testosterone is an expensive medication to purchase. And if as many gentlemen as we think might be low, it could end up adding 15, 20, 30 billion pounds a year onto the NHS's bill.
Right. Okay. There we go. Interesting.
You could argue, of course, that that's a little short-sighted, because improving a gentleman's testosterone hormone levels will improve all sorts of other aspects in their life, and long term you may well lower the bill.
Exactly. They're getting better health outcomes across the board.
Exactly, because it is a fascinating subject, the hormones, and it combines really well with all of the research going into longevity medicine, because of course we're living longer now. Children born now will easily live to 100. We're thinking in the next decade or two we'll reach 120. Well, that's okay if you're healthy.
Yeah, about quality of life.
Yeah, nobody wants to spend the last 40 years of their life, sitting at home in a chair, unable to do anything. But if you're still playing golf, going to the gym, going for walks, having wonderful time with loved ones, well, then that's what we want. And hormone optimization, I think, can play a big role.
I guess I'm probably seeing here parallels with HRT for women. If we go back a couple of decades, it was very controversial when it was rolled out. Maybe the first iterations of it weren't so great. Now there's great HRT programs, bioidentical hormones. So I guess in a sense, maybe the TRT is just playing catch up now.
100%. Yeah, I know you and I have both had a little bit of pushback as well with our to talk about andropause and the male menopause. And one lady did openly confide in me that the part of the reason she was uncomfortable about it was women had worked so hard for decades to get it recognized, and now almost like we were doing it, we were fast tracking it. It was unfair.
Yeah, I've come across similar thing talking to people about the andropause actually. But here's the thing, ladies that are listening to this, it's amazing the recognition of menopause has now, quite rightly, and it is a very different condition. But I think where we can be helping each other is recognizing that for ladies and gentlemen, these kind of changes and symptoms are likely to happen at a similar time of life. So that's going to impact your relationships, particularly if you're in a heterosexual partnership as well. That can, I've seen it with our clients, if both people are suffering in silence and not aware of what's going on, it can actually create a real distance between them. And yeah, the menopause is 100% for the ladies, but I think we need to start recognizing, the andropause and how that could be impacting so many men without them even being aware of it. So there's a massive education piece here. You and I, Ross, are going to do some stuff to keep pushing this message out. But yeah, there's a massive education piece to do here on letting men and women know what's going on, hormonally for midlife men and beyond, and also what the solutions are. So we'll come back to the moment about testosterone, but we're always quite strong, Claire, on the lifestyle solutions, because there are things you do from a lifestyle perspective. You talked about them earlier, but it is worth noting your point there. Your testosterone level is set where it's at. It can fluctuate a bit. And there are certain things you can do. You can optimize your hormone levels by, eating the correct kind of diet, healthy, fresh foods, training in certain ways. For us guys, listen, HIIT is shown to push up human growth hormone and testosterone immediately afterwards. Resistance training with heavy weights, again, pushes up testosterone and human growth hormone. If you're doing that continuously, you're likely to be able to slow the rate of decline, but it's where your starting point is now that you need to consider. So there are a lot of lifestyle things you can do to enhance your hormone health. But if someone thinks, right, okay, maybe I am suffering from this, I'll go and get tested. If they come in around that 20 milligrams, nanomoles
per liter.
Nanomoles, and the 20 nanomoles, all good. If you're lower down, what are the options for you then?
So there's a bit of a grey area around kind of the 18 sort of mark. So if someone came in with 18 and they presented with all of the symptoms, we would undoubtedly treat them with testosterone. If someone came in and they were like, yeah, I'm a little bit tired, but I kind of just feel like I maybe need to recover a bit better, that's going to give our physicians a much more difficult time of prescribing. It's not quite as clear cut. So the difference when you're going private is it's a two-way communication. It's not you're looking at the bloods and it's a yes or a no. It's a how do you feel? What are your symptoms like? What's your research told you so far? So it's that sort of two-way discussion before you prescribe. So there's that shoulder area which is a little bit grey. As soon as you drop down though to sort of 16 and below, it's a really obvious choice that testosterone replacement therapy or hormone optimization therapy can work really well. Now, testosterone comes in many forms. It can be a gel, it can be a cream, it can be a tablet, a patch, or an injection. And within each of those, you've then got different options as well. I used creams for many years, quite successfully, although it is harder to perfect your hormone levels when you're relying on absorption through the skin. So I still had the occasional up and down. So I had the occasional day when my wife came to me and said, yeah, you're not quite with it today. You're not firing on all cylinders. I can see you're a little bit vacant behind your eyes. You're not quite as quick with your decision making. Moving to injections was a bit of a game changer, really, because I had all the benefits of the cream, but now a constant optimal level of hormone. So it completely eradicated all of the ups and downs from a hormone perspective.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the treatment. So someone's found that their levels are low, testosterone levels are low, they've opted for treatment. How often are they having to inject themselves?
It totally depends on the type of testosterone that you use, and what your goals are really. Combine that with what else you've got going on in your life. So most of our gentlemen, if they go down an injection route, will be on cyprinate, enanthate, sustanon, or libido. Now, I take cyprinate. I inject that twice a week. Some of our gentlemen even do it 3 times a week. And the reason for that is we don't make all of our testosterone on a Saturday night when we're asleep. We make a little bit every night, which is why sleep's so important, in the testes, which means your testosterone is highest first thing in the morning. So ideally, you would be injecting a tiny bit every morning. But the counter to that is that's not convenient. If you're traveling for work, if you're on holiday, you don't want to take all of that paraphernalia with you. So we use this microdosing principle where we go twice a week on average, because we want to more closely mirror how the testes create testosterone, which is a million miles away, of course, from the gentleman down the gym who are perhaps have taken an abusive level and they're injecting huge, what they would consider perhaps heroic doses into their body, which is completely abnormal. It's not how the testes create testosterone. So that was a long way of saying most of our injections are a microdosing principle, often during the week, with the opposite being libido. Libido is injected once approximately every 10 to 12 weeks. That's favoured often by older gentlemen who perhaps don't want or don't mind not being 100% all of the time, because you generally have this slow build up. You feel great weeks 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it slowly tapers back off again.
Right. Makes sense.
So yeah, that does tend to be favoured by an older gentleman, and the cyprinate and enanthate sustanon for younger gentlemen like us.
So you touched on something there I did want to cover, because I think testosterone kind of has this stereotype image there, doesn't it, from the world of bodybuilding. And obviously we in popular culture, we associate testosterone with like aggression and all that kind of stuff. But maybe it would help to explain to people, like, if you start doing testosterone replacement therapy, you're not going to turn into a raging Hulk in the gym.
No, definitely not. So at a therapeutic level, we're prescribing tiny amounts of testosterone, as I say, to more closely mimic what the testes would produce anyway. So a 10 ml vial of testosterone will last me and most of our gentlemen around 20 weeks. That same vial might last someone in the gym 1 or 2 weeks. Oof. So it's a hugely different level that we're giving, therapeutic to abusive.
Yeah.
At a therapeutic level, you are still approximately 3 times lower than would flag in a drugs test within sport.
Right.
So that gives you an idea of where you can be, because some men have high testosterone anyway.
Yeah.
So I could inject 3 times more than I am and still pass a drugs test in boxing.
Right.
So yeah, low microdosing principles don't then lead to the other symptoms or other side effects that many people associate with testosterone, the aggression, the big guys down the gym. Very different.
Okay, let's just talk about that, because obviously it sounds amazing and we've outlined a lot of pros there. Are there any cons to TRT? Or is there anyone that it's not for?
I've never personally experienced any side effects. That's not to say that they don't exist. You do always have to weigh up someone's overall medical condition. So if they've had recent cancer, tumours in certain parts of the body, the doctor would screen you to see if you're appropriate. It's pretty much pointless in someone who drinks, smokes, parties all the time and eats a load of processed food. It's not magic. It's not going to counter that. But in conjunction with optimal lifestyle choices, it really is a game changer. So those people are out. If someone is quite young and they're still hoping to have a family, that's a really important thing to talk about with the doctor, because supplementing testosterone lowers fertility. Now, you can counter that with a separate medication called HCG. However, there's no guarantees that your fertility won't still reduce. So the doctor will still want to cover off with you. If you do want children, I would highly recommend you don't start this injection, even with HCG, because it might hamper your chances of being a father in the future.
Okay.
In that situation, you can, though, however, take Clomid, which is a tablet that increases fertility. It's often used in fertility treatment. And by working on LH and FSH, some of the other sex hormones, it will also boost testosterone. So you still get that great feeling of increased energy, feeling more youthful again, without hurting your chances of being a father. So they're the main ones that we would look for.
Okay, this is brilliant. Thanks, Ross. Thanks, Ross, for your time on this. I'm sure a lot of men listening are going to be fascinated. So maybe just explain how the Alphagenix approach works. Someone presents to you going, I may be suffering from andropause.
Yeah, so really straightforward. It's a blood test to start with, combined with 2 appointments with the doctor. So the doctor will first talk to the gentleman about their symptoms. Could it be linked to anything else? There's lifestyle advice provided there. We then do the blood tests. They're all carried out locally to the gentleman via a network of 200 clinics around the UK. And then a follow-up appointment happens with the doctor to discuss the results and decide what's appropriate. Now, we have had one guy did that whole first process in 5 days, but more typically it's 10 days to 2 weeks, because someone has to make an appointment at their local clinic. That has to be between 7 and 11 in the morning, which is when their testosterone is highest, and it's a fasted blood test. So that's normally where there's a bit of a delay. But typically within 10 days, 2 weeks, a gentleman could have approached Alphagenix, spoken to me, found out if it's for them, spoke to the doctor twice, had their blood tests, and be already ready to start on their TRT.
Ah, amazing. I mean, it's a great thing you set up. I mean, it's only a year old, right? You were saying at the start.
We actually officially started just in January this year.
Wow, amazing.
Right at the start.
Cool. So in the show notes, we'll put links to Alphagenix. So if you're listening and you're interested, you can get in touch. I mean, guys, what I would say to you is if you're in midlife or beyond and you've experienced any of the symptoms that we're talking about, but not fleetingly for a short space of time, they're ongoing, then, you've actually got nothing to lose by taking a blood test to see where your testosterone levels are at the moment. And, we always say, awareness precedes change, and when you know what's going on, you can make a choice.
Brilliant. I love that.
Yeah. Ross, thank you so much for being on. Fascinating.
Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah.